I'd like to welcome everybody to the public hearing on the town budget, and I'd like to turn it over to Town Manager Jovan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you, just want to announce this was placed in the Southbridge Evening News print edition May 8th through the 9th, 2025, well in advance of the 2-week notice. Town of Southbridge Council Chambers, Town Council, Thursday, May 29th, 2025 at 6 p.m., a public hearing. Pursuant to the Town of Southbridge Home Rule Charter, Chapter 10, Financial Provisions and Procedures, Section 5, Notice of Public Hearing on Proposed Budget, and Section 8, Notice of Public Hearing on Capital Programs, the Town Manager will be holding a public hearing on the following. 1, fiscal year 2026 proposed budget in the amounts of General Government $19,825,990, Public Safety $9,018,485, Public Works, $2,647,767. Human Services, $1,149,842. Bay Path, $1,318,115. Southbridge School Department, $38,697,027. A Sewer Enterprise Fund of $5,467,343. Water Enterprise Fund, $4,509,791,000, and the Solid Waste and Recycling Enterprise Fund in $2,993,082, for a total proposed budget of $85,627,442. Item 2, the fiscal year 2026 capital improvement program. The town manager's recommended 5-year capital improvement program and proposed funding of programs for FY26. Copies of this FY 2026 budget and capital improvement program were available for inspection at the Southbridge Town Manager's office in the Town Hall and on the website beginning on May 15th. If I can, I'm just going to go to the podium and we'll go through the item. Okay, so thank you. So, honorable members of the council, audience guests, and for those at home in the public, tonight we'll review the town council, the FY 2026 budget public hearing prepared by myself, John Jovan, town manager, and I'd like to thank our finance director, treasurer collector Michelle Hall, our executive office, town operations, Dean Yakabuchi, all the department heads, and all our vendors that work at water, wastewater, and the water treatment plant facility for all their work in preparing this budget. As you're aware, this has been a difficult budget process with a lot of personnel issues, and I'm grateful for all the work that went into this with timing and the cooperation of the town council. I want to talk about what our budget priorities were for this year. Our number one and most trying was to maintain our core services, to maintain our budget within the tax levy limit, and to continue our pursuit of fiscal oversight, accountability, and stability. Those were our driving forces throughout the last fiscal year and this fiscal year, and will continue through FY26 and beyond. Our budget highlights for this year. When we put out our budget message, we requested that all departments provide a budget recommendation to us, what level of service. There were some tweaks to that where some individuals provided requests for additional personnel. However, this budget maintains all departments at a level service budget with staffing. So any staff or positions that are budgeted in FY25 are maintained throughout FY26. One of our key components, and we do know, and we have discussed this at length, is that our public safety departments are stressed to the max with an ever-increasing amount of calls for service, and we're able to maintain those at current staffing levels. We wish that we could do more to provide additional staffing given the complexities of the community and the calls for service. However, again, we are at the maximum tax levy. We did work to reclassify a position in the Community Service Director from an S10 to an MS12, given the job duties that that individual provides and oversight that needed to be brought up to the MS schedule. As part of our goals for FY25 was a complete reorganization of the Department of Public Works, and we're able to maintain that with the tweak that the full-time position as project manager through this fiscal year was downgraded to a part-time position, and that continues, and we're grateful that that can continue throughout next fiscal year. We have worked to move some of our line items to centralized accounts, most namely utilities. Our biggest one right now is our electricity, where we are moving those accounts out from within individual line items to a centralized account. We're also looking to streamline other accounts to centralized within the accounting office to just make it easier for management, i.e. gas already goes there, and the utilities, and we'll work for other ones throughout the next fiscal year. We addressed the salary of the electrical inspector as promoted in the budget meetings. It's not a substantial increase, however, it gets us closer to what the actual cost should be for that electrical inspector, given the number of inspections that that individual accomplishes. And the Southbridge Public Schools were funded at the required state foundation level. Based on all the budget hearings that we conducted, and thank you to all the counselors and the various chairmen of the subcommittee that listened to our budget presentations, there were some changes from the original public hearing notice. However, the overall bottom line remained stable. So in general government, our final budget came in at $20,076,020. Public safety at $8,768,485. Our Public Works Department of Public Works, it's $2,647,737. Human Services, $1,149,842. Bay Path Regional School District at $1,318,115. Our school department's net school spending, I'd like to thank the school department as well as our finance department, Dean and Michelle, that worked to make sure that we pin down the correct numbers for our school spending to get that number correct on our end. Our sewer enterprise fund, $5,424,143. Water enterprise fund at $4,507,977, and solid waste again at $2,993,082, which indicates a total budget appropriation for the town at $85,582,248,000. Indirect costs out of that are $1,680,634. Now, out of our proposed budget, it's broken down to revenues and expenses. Where do we derive our funding sources? We have the maximum tax levy, and we are proposing that we go up to the maximum tax levy of $29,035,111,000. That is the maximum that we can go without seeking a 2.5 override. This was, again, a trying budget with a lot of factors. The fact that there's many communities around us that had to seek a 2.5 override unsuccessfully, but we were able to maintain all our services while staying within the minimum or the maximum tax levy. This is similar to last year when we did go to the maximum tax levy. However, when we got into December, once we had our final numbers for revenue that had come in for FY24, we were able to adjust that maximum tax levy, reduce it by about $500,000, thereby reducing the impact to the taxpayer. Our goal would be to do the same thing once our final revenues come in, any changes in state aid, any changes within the budget, because we have certain contingencies in there for bargaining units. Whenever those settle out, then we would take another analysis of the budget to reduce that and minimize the impact to the taxpayer. So you have the prior year tax levy, 2.5% that you can add on to that, new growth, and then you add in the Bay Path debt exclusion and the fire station debt exclusion. So this will be the second year that the fire department debt exclusion gets into the tax levy. But however, that number is not the final number. That is for the short-term borrowing that we have been doing as we ramp up to that fire station construction. As everyone is aware, that has been awarded, and we will be going, shovels will be in the ground, and the groundbreaking has been announced. So throughout the next 18 months or so, as we go out, we'll do a series of short-term borrowings until the project is completed and finalized, and then we'll do one big borrowing to bond it out. We also have cherry sheet receipts that include Chapter 70. Chapter 70 is the school aid. As you can see, there's approximately about $2 million of an increase from the state in Chapter 70 to the town of Southbridge. When we look at Chapter 70 receipts, or cherry sheet receipts, all these receipts that we have incorporated into our budget are those that were announced by the governor when she announced her budget. We're close to today, today the Senate's version of the cherry sheet came out, their final numbers. There's some changes between what the governor has proposed and what the Senate has proposed and what the House has proposed. We're keeping an eye on those numbers to see where they're going to finalize, to see if there's any impact in our budget. However, usually the House, or the governor's budget, House 1 they call it, is usually the one that is closest to the compromise once it goes through Ways and Means and the compromise. So we're really keeping an eye on that. Unrestricted general government aid, again, was 4.427, and I believe today the Senate's version was slightly higher. Charter school reimbursement, school choose receiving tuition, are other receipts that we get off of the cherry sheet. Local receipts is another avenue that we take all the local receipts that come in, motor vehicle excise tax, our landfill reimbursement, and other local receipts. Other local receipts could be a variety of receipts that we receive from inspection fees, building permits, anything that comes into the local is all mixed into local receipts. Dean and Michelle really worked to look at what that number is going to be to try to be as conservative, but to capture as much local receipts as we can comfortably feel that we would receive for the year so that we're not impacting the tax levy. Again, so it's all a balance of what is the maximum tax levy, what are the local receipts. So we also need to keep an eye on that given economic times and all that, so we'll keep an eye on the local receipts. Transfers out, commercial drive reimbursement. The debt service of Millennium is a receipt that we get for the water that we sell to the Millennium plant, income that we receive for that. It's technically called debt service, but it is that line, income line. And then we have cable operation offset. Now cable, we have to be very careful, and we're really taking a strict analysis of that. Given the number of subscribers that no longer have boxes, if you go to streaming, that is not one of the subscribers that we get an income from. So Dean and our office, Dean and Gail in the office have really been in touch with Charter and other entities to make sure that we're recapturing all the revenue that we're supposed to. So we're taking a look at that contract that was last signed 2 years ago, right before I became town manager, to make sure that we go through that and that they are paying the appropriate sum. But we really have to, because those revenues are dropping, we have to take a look at the whole cable operation to make sure that we're not going to end up putting an impact on us on the operating side. So that is a concern that we're taking a look at. And then the bond premium is transferred. If you look at other available receipts, it had 80,000 dropped to 7,500 last year and 7,500 this year. When we reviewed the budget last year, we were really trying to analyze to make sure that all the receipts that we're capturing are actual receipts. We could not verify what the difference was between the 80 and the 7,500, so we've kept it at 7,500. We know what the 7,500 is. That's the Graves registration. You know, when we sell books, street books and the Graves, we know that what that number is. But until we can determine what that extra $80,000 is, we've kept it at 7,500. Another revenue source is because we have the enterprise accounts, water, sewer, and cable and solid waste. With the enterprise funds, because those are enterprise funds and they're separated, we're able to allocate costs to those departments for all the ancillary work that we do in the town halls. And we did a analysis of the indirect cost analysis. We did it last year. We updated it this year. It's a formula that we'll take a look at all the salaries that we have within accounts, estimate what the, based on surveys last year that were conducted by an outside consultant, we're able to determine what percentage of time employees are using or dedicated to those accounts. Then you're able to offset those costs to the indirect cost, and that becomes a revenue for us. Any questions so far on the revenue side? Good? All right. Now we get to the expense side. Cherry sheet offsets are those offsets that it's a library, and there's one more, but those is the 168. The charges are above school choice assessment. So those are the students that have left and no longer in our district, but are outsourced to other communities. That is what is charged to the town at $1,639,000. Charter school assessment, huge increase in charter school. You had the opening of Old Sturbridge Village, which has now moved all the way up from K through 8, so they're a charter school. And there was a charter school that was opened in Worcester that a lot of our students go to. So we get charged for those students that are not being educated here in Southbridge, but we are charged for their education. Allowances for abatements and exemptions. Last night we talked about, and it's on Monday night's agenda at the general government, was the HERO Act, and increasing the exemptions for veterans. That's where those charges would come out of, would be the abatements and exemptions. Moving down, an expense cable operating budget. That is their budget, $210,000. Insurance, you'll see insurance, and we've talked about this, and I've kept the council pretty much informed of what our health insurance is, and substantial increase. And then you just have the Bay Path budget, Southbridge Public School budgets, and again, those water, sewer, and solid waste enterprise funds expenses. What are the major factors that are involved in our increase for FY26 budget? Retirement. I think in my budget memo that I sent to you indicated that we have to, out of that retirement assessment, they are trying to get us to a point where all retirees, it's fully funded. So that it has an impact on our budget for the next at least 7 years, I believe it is, that we're going to be going out to, 7 to 8 years, that there's $2 million approximately in there that is being used to fund it fully. That's not necessarily available for us to reduce the tax levy. So hopefully if we're all around in 7 years, when that comes off, the town will have $2 million to the good. Health insurance, again, $1.1 million increase, a 15% increase in health insurance costs for this year. Our office, Michelle, Dean, and we're working with the school district, really took a detailed analysis at health insurance to make sure we have the right numbers, the right participants, the right cost to make sure that we have this as accurate, because we don't want to make mistakes. Bay Path increased $107,000. Our required local contribution increased $386,000 in the school. So if you take a look at all that, just cost alone, fixed costs that we have no control over, $1.6 million, not including the general insurance. So it didn't leave us much room to do anything else within our budget. Our enterprise fund budgets, you see on the sewer end, We're actually still down from where we were in FY '24, but there is an increase of $220,000 this year. Water, $200,000, and solid waste has the biggest at $354,000. What are those factors that go into the enterprise fund? And those enterprise funds are all for, each enterprise is set up for the operations of that specific entity. Water, delivery of water to the residents of Southbridge, as well as delivery of water to Charlton. So there's the operator cost, indirect cost, maintenance, repairing vehicles, capital, insurance, legal, all goes into those budgets. A couple of factors, we moved the billing clerk to a direct cost that's allocated across all 3 enterprise accounts. So we have, that person does all the billing, collections, anything to do with the billing of those enterprise funds. It started with curbside and has been trained to go over to the water sewer as one person for that. On the sewer end, the wastewater treatment facility, we have the new operator that's on board. I don't know about anybody else, but from what I've heard, I've lost my sense of smell, so I can't smell, but I've heard that there's a marked improvement in the odor down there. And that's just on the small changes that they've made so far. They haven't even got to the bigger changes that they will be doing down there. A lot of that, and that is a driver in cost, is the change in the composting process that we talked about when we selected them. And once we are able to secure the screener that they will use, that then they'll be able to reuse the compost, amendment, because they'll screen it with wood chips. Right now they can't do the screening because we don't have that machine yet, but as soon as they do, that should reduce the composting cost. And again, there was an increase in indirect costs. A lot of that also goes to, you have an increase in health insurance, that drives up the cost of all employees throughout the whole town of Southbridge. When you do the cost allocation, of course, that percentage also is passed on to the indirect costs. On the water department side, this is our first year of the sewer, but we anticipated what the inflationary costs will be when they, their contract, when we go into the second year of the contract. It's a factor per the contract for the consumer price index, all set by the state, the factor. It could go as high as 5, as low as 2, not knowing where we're gonna go on the sewer. We're going on the higher end for the first year until we get a cycle going. On the water end, the factor for this year is 0.0385. So that's based on the January of the prior year to the January of this year. That is the factor, you multiply it. Nothing we can do about it, that's what the contract is. So there's approximately 3.8% on the cost of the water department operator alone. On the curb side, we had a large reduction in the subscribers. This is the first year of the enterprise fund on that. Still feeling it out, so hopefully we can get it stable. Unfortunately, we're gonna have to review the rates on that, as well as the water sewer. On our enterprise funds, retained earnings. This is the retained earnings section. So total retained earnings, and again, for this fiscal year, because they're based on last year's retained earnings, total was 3.085. That's between water and sewer, combined water and sewer retained earnings. Currently, on the retained earnings for sewer, we have approximately $2 million, and on water, $1,075,000. Now, in regards to that, we all know that we have an IMA with the town of Charlton. I know some discuss that, but we still have that IMA. So we're gonna have to do the factor this year as to the retained earnings, and that will be on for Monday night. The retained earnings for water is $1,075,000. We've already done the factor. We will have to transfer out $140,000, $403,000. Then we would transfer the remaining balance of $934,714 to water stabilization. And the below number is, as of yesterday, what that account balance is for water stabilization. So essentially, after we do the transfer Monday, we should have $2.6 million in water stabilization. Great number. However, on the flip side, I'll talk later about what's going to happen with some of that money. Free cash as it stands today, we have $3,303,021 in free cash. And our stabilization accounts stand at, our stabilization fund balance is $5,328,200, which is a good balance for us to have and maintain its stabilization. The special purpose stabilization fund balance, that is our capital stabilization and water stabilization combined, because those are special purpose stabilization funds. So from a stabilization perspective, we're in a healthy position for that. And again, our certified free cash of $3,303,021. And just on the budget side, this is off of FY24. I thought it'd be interesting to see. This is the pie chart, as you can see in FY24, and it's going to be similar to FY25 and 26. Our biggest cost is the public schools and education. At 52% of our budget is dedicated to the education of students, either in Southbridge or in Bay Path. So that's it for the budget. Does anybody have any questions on the budget or would like any information? Hopefully I didn't bore you or confuse you.
Council Daniels and Council Shinnick.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. I'm just curious, what's the percentage of the stabilization funds to the budget?
To the budget? Oh, geez, it should have been in there. Let's see. Percent of budget, special purpose is 3.89, stabilization fund 6.9, about 7%.
Right. 7%, all right.
About
So
7%. So we're right in the 7 to 10%.
And the bond houses want us at 5 or better, right?
What's that?
The bond houses want us at 5 or better?
Correct, yeah, I believe so.
That's a good thing. Thank you.
Yeah, so from stabilization point, we're right, pretty much on target, our free cash. So, free cash, a percentage of the budget was 4.8%. So, you don't want too much free cash, you don't want too little free cash, and free cash isn't really free. But any questions?
Council Shinnick.
The landfill royalty money, where is that?
That is not a special stabilization fund, that's outside of these numbers.
So you can get us that number?
I think it's approximately 4.2 million, 4.1 million, don't quote me, but I think it's around 4 million.
Okay, and then my other question.
There's a limit on it though, and I do have to research, just to your point about what you can use with that.
Right.
There is a restriction on that that's in our audit report, so I have to follow up with what that restriction is. But it is listed as a restricted fund balance.
The trash pickup,
Yes.
we're 1 year into this. I'm sure year 2 is going to be discussion year to see how year 1 did.
Yep.
And the potential of the increase because of the subscribers opting out. Is it, during that time, is it time to look at the whole operation to see to make it better, or
I would say yes, because of, your history.
right?
When I became chairman many years ago now, was when we had the contract issue, and we set up the committee just to study the ad hoc, and it took almost 7 years to figure out how to get to this point. So probably sooner than later, we would want to talk about what the next steps may be to either do a combination transfer station, trash pickup, you know what I mean?
Right.
And see what the state. I've had some conversations with Jimmy Philbrook and Andy Golis over in Charlton. Andy Golis, the town administrator, about possible regionalization as to a transfer station. Where would that make sense? Because they're in the same predicament as us. I think they're in a better spot because they don't manage the trash pickup.
Correct.
Every resident there, they're on their own. They hire whoever they want. So yes.
So we'll look at that whole.
I think, yeah, we have to, yeah, because, another 3 years left on this contract, it's going to come up quick.
Thank you.
Any other questions by council? Public? All
Okay.
set?
All right, so I'm going to move into the capital. On the capital improvement program, what did we do this year? Capital improvement plan and spreadsheet was revamped. This year we had the town hall facility feasibility study funded through the Massachusetts Historic Preservation. It's still ongoing. Our report is pending on early fiscal year 26. Everybody knows the school facilities master plan came out. I've had conversations with the chairman about what do we do next as to evaluating that report, working with the school district to come up with solutions, study it, because we have worked together on the school side before when we did the middle school, high school, and it does take a number of time, but there's a lot of planning that has to go into that. And I've already talked to the receiver about some of those things. And capital funding that I asked for were for any immediate needs that individuals thought they would need this year. And it was extensive, and it's something that we'll bring back in June as to what we believe should be the priorities. But if you took a look at all the capital requested that was in for FY26, I have here repair to the masonry steeple. So as part of the feasibility study, they did a comprehensive review of this structure here in the town hall and the tower right in the front, and there's substantial repairs that need to be made. I estimated $100,000. Well, that was before I saw the photos and spoke to the actual engineer. We're going to multiply that by at least 10. We're looking at probably $1 million, and it's a critical need to be done. PEG will work to see if we can get some historic preservation funds. There's not substantial amounts, but we'll work on that. But that's going to be a priority that we're going to have to. We need to preserve this building, and that will be critical. Cable just asked for some Apple Mac for editing. IT, we have a complete revamp of our network that's ongoing. This was just to replace some computers throughout the town offices, not just town hall, but DPW and any other ancillary officers for that kind of equipment. Police had requested 2 police vehicles and electronic control weapons, otherwise known as tasers. Fire department has an annual radio replacement, medical equipment of $75,000, and an ambulance replacement. Department of Public Works, I know last year we gave them an administrative vehicle, and this year I put in another administrative vehicle, not as an additional vehicle, but the vehicle that was purchased by the former DPW director was not conducive to being an administrative vehicle for the DPW, and I transferred that to the police department. So when I put my final package together next month, you'll see some changes to this actual list. Elevator modernization of $350,000. Now that is a number that we have to do the modernization. However, we applied for a grant last year through the ADA state. We were not funded. They asked us to do some studies, additional studies. We just did a self-assessment for ADA compliance on a self-assessment with assistance from the Central Mass Planning and Regional Commission. Hopefully that will put us in a better position for a grant so we can reduce this. It's a small match as opposed to the $350,000. I think the max for that grant is $250,000, so we would have to come up with about $100,000. The school capital, I asked the school department, and it was great working with Mark at the school department as to what critical needs would be. These were some masonry repairs, roof replacement, repairs to the parking lot at the high school, middle school, which when I asked him, wow, that's, you know, we're only there 13 years. He said the parking lot itself is good. It is actually the driveway coming around in the horseshoe that doesn't really have a good coat for the traffic with the buses all the time. So we would need to take a look at that. Charlton Street oil tank lines. They've asked for McMahon Field football lights. I put it in here. That's their request. They already know that that's probably definitely a no-go for right now, but we've talked about grants with them, and then they're looking for 2 for their vehicles for the maintenance department and 2 student transport vans. So that's what they were looking for in FY26 as needs throughout all the departments. And I'll bring that list, and I'm planning on breaking it out in different ways, so that's not just one list. Well, you know how previously it's always been one list and you vote in everything. I'm going to try to break it down as best we can to see different tiers of what's critical, what we might be able to put off for a year and all that. Also, as I stated last year, and I've worked with Christine and our accountant, all those open accounts and monies that we transferred within ARPA to fund DPW vehicles, we have a whole list of that, of available funds that we would use to say, okay, where can we fit these in to this overall package and clean up. This year was trying to be a cleanup year and a new planning year. So that's on that post. One of the challenges is, one, we had the facility study for the school, so again, that's why you only, on a 5-year plan, we only really have 1 year for the schools because we need to work and develop that list. On the Department of Public Works, the former director left in the middle of budget, so we don't have a clear plan. So we have some gaps in that, but we are working to that, and that would be a major goal for us in the upcoming year. What are the major capital projects? We're doing a lot, as everybody knows. The fire station in construction, animal control shelter is in design and hopefully going to go out to bid at FY26. East Main Street road improvements, we're in construction. Ashland Avenue and Elm Street bridges are still in design, but we need to get that completed. I did request an extension on those grants till the end of the calendar year so that we don't lose $1 million towards those. Rail trails in construction. Hook La Rochelle downtown tip project. That's being bid next month. River Crane Phase 1 in construction. River Crane Phase 2 is in design to be bid in the fall. The Community Development Block Grant for the North Street roads, all those roads around there, is going to be done in the fall. And the Central Street Downtown Masswork Grant design is new and being ongoing. So a lot of road projects that are going on. That doesn't include a package that Interim Director Butch Jackson is putting together to do within Chapter 90. He's putting out a paving plan to go out to bid to fix some of the other streets that are in critical needs. He's addressed that. Dresser Street, we've been in discussions. They came out and Butch has worked with them on Dresser Street, and the plan is to have that done by National Grid in the fall. So that's the plan on that. So as you can see, we do have a lot of projects going. In addition to the ongoing projects at the community center for the generator and kitchen installation, we already completed the door project. These are road projects that have been previously funded that will require additional funding in FY26. Again, Ashland Ave with an estimated construction cost of $2 million. So we have to develop a plan to come up with $1.5 million on the town side to do that bridge. Elm Street, estimated cost at $1.3 million. We got to come up with $800,000 to do that bridge. So those two alone are about $2.3 million. We've already expended out of the $10 million bond, approximately $3 million in total roads, $2 million this year on the East Main project, and $1 million previously committed. And this leads me to the final indication. As I said that we're going to have about $2.6 million, 2.6 in the water stabilization fund. We have to, for the tip project, for the downtown tip project, we were committed to pay $1 million for the water lines that are being done on Hamilton Street, Central Street, and Foster Street that are part of that tip project on the town side. Not the actual tip, but anything from Main Street down to the tip, those were ours that we were committed to. That wasn't seen in any, I'm sure it was discussed back many years ago. Tip projects usually go 7 to 10 years before they're actually get out to bid. So I'm sure 7 to 10 years ago it was discussed. It was never booked into a finance plan. So that was kind of a shock this year, but fortunately we have the water stabilization monies and not go out to borrow to further impact the ratepayers. So that's the plan on that. So I just want to share with you what the capital plan looks. Did not go. Hold on. Let's see. I'm trying to get rid of this. Hold on. Okay. So I said we used former town manager that had developed. It was a pretty good capital plan that he had as far as a spreadsheet. So if you can see it, I outlined it, and it was provided in the budget books. I've outlined it as we are now under the town charter. With the changes in the charter, we went from a 6-year to a 5-year capital. So we are at a 5-year capital now, not 6 years with the change in charter. That was effective at the time that it was adopted by the legislature. But what I did is I didn't want to lose anything that we were already funded, so I did put a column for FY25 in there and go out to FY30. So some of the money that was already allocated in prior years, the generator for the town hall, we've applied for the grant through, I think it's FEMA at this time, because it was MEMA, it was brick grant, so it's kind of changed. So hopefully we'll get that grant. We're still waiting on an estimate for a pad at the town hall, a concrete pad estimate. So we'll get that through, and then the IT servers. And we kind of came out here on a 6-year plan on inspections, and the buildings, I didn't have anything listed for buildings for the town hall because we're in the middle of the feasibility study. So I wasn't just going to throw numbers out there without having the feasibility study. However, we do know steeple, we've talked about mechanicals in this building, and they will lay out in that study, they will lay out critical needs, immediate things to look at in the next couple of years, and then future outline of offices. I want to just take a note on the inspections, replace the F-150 curbside, and then, so that's for the curbside collection. That was planned out for 27. However, we found out that the ranger that we had gone down to curbside is fully rotted out and can't be repaired from what we've been told. So we have to take a look at replacing that. The police did give us a 5-year plan, so their plan is pretty much solid for 5 years with his annual 2 cruises a year, some IT, as you can see, the electronic weapons, as well as carpet and roof replacement. So we'll work with him in the next fiscal year to talk about the roof and trying to get that analyzed to see if it absolutely has to be done that year or moved out. As you can see on the police department, the fire department, they have an annual radio replacement, tower truck. You can see later out the $300,000. He's not asking to have it replaced. It would be to bring it up to make sure it's up to standards and any work that needed to be done. We just spent a lot of money on some of the other things in that truck, so that's the plan on there. Medical equipment, $75,000. Again, I put that in that plan earlier. However, that's going to be reduced because they received that grant 2 weeks ago that they came forward for one of those Lucas devices. That was for 3. So we'll reduce that when we come. And the ambulance replacement, that's going to be to replace a 2016 ambulance. And the reason we would have to, and I just see Council Dow taking a look at it, by OMS standards, you have to replace them by a certain age. However, it takes 2 years to order one and get it delivered. So even though we're talking, 10 years? It's going to take 2 years to get it delivered. So now you're talking another 2 years. So we have to order it, budget it, order it, and wait for it. And that's a big thing right now in police, not even police vehicles. The outfitters and the manufacturers are so backed up that if you order a fire engine today, you're talking 2 to 3 years out before you can get it. So police and fire have pretty much done their 5-year outlooks. Town hall, we're waiting on the feasibility study. And let's see if this is page. DPW, I just did a minor outlook on a year out because I talked to Pete Preventure, but we don't have the DPW director. When he comes on board, we'll work with the new DPW director as to a full analysis of their trucks and vehicles. They're in pretty good shape for this year. It's a couple smaller trucks they'd like to get, but other than that, the only other one would be the 450 utility, which is the one with the crane on it, that the crane is older, that they would have to replace. And then street sidewalks, we didn't do anything really with that. I did put in some money for roof engineering and the repainting of the salt sheds that were old. Water sewer, we're working with them because we have the new sewer operator. We have about $5 million in money that has been allocated to capital projects throughout the year that were never completed by Veolia or planned out. We'll be working with Jacobs on that to bring that up. Library, we've had some money allocated to the library. She did put in for some smaller cost. Parking lot resurfacing would be the largest one. So she did it 5-year. Recreation had given us just a 1 year. The community center, right now we already have money allocated. We also had, through the efforts of PEG, a grant to evaluate that building and provide, they'll be coming forward with, which I say, if we could fund it, it would be absolutely beautiful, but that would have to be put on priority. So they also will give us a list of, this is immediate for heating, roof, anything like that, but a longer goal if you were to do some reconstruction using the same envelope. We're not talking about changing the envelope, but using the same envelope and moving things around a little bit. New entryway. One of the concepts that I saw that was pretty unique is, you know, the garage door that comes up, moving that more to like a showroom door, like for an auto with glass, that would open up into a courtyard in the front. So it was actually pretty nice, but again, we'd have to seek some grants to do that because that's not in the budget. Airport, we do a regular capital improvement plan. They did not submit theirs, but they have an ongoing capital improvement plan, and as you know, we're doing the 6T hangar there. This was the schools. Again, the schools, we just did a 1 year, and we'll work with them through the facilities plan to develop priorities on that. And so there's nothing really on the 5 years. So this really is a new work in place, and I'll take any questions if you want on that. But it is our 5-year plan with a lot of work that has to go forward in the next year.
Council Montague and Council Shaney.
Thank you. I'm a huge fan of cable, but that 21,000, that's for more than one computer, right?
I think it was 3.
Oh,
Yeah.
perfect. That's fantastic.
3 editing stations, I believe it was.
Fantastic. That's great for them.
Council Shaney.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Maybe you can answer to the town manager. The school building that they presented to us, isn't it the council's responsibility to establish a needs committee, and then if they decide that it needs a building, isn't that the council's responsibility?
I'm sure the town manager can address this. My knowledge, going through the middle high school, being the chairman of the building committee, there was an assessment committee of needs, and then there was the brick and mortar people. And in my experience, I always thought the town manager appoints that building committee. They usually come forward and say, we don't have enough space, or our building's falling down, or, you know, different things. But I mean, we as a town are the landlords of the buildings, and they are the tenants, and that's the way we always looked at it. Jack, if you want to add to that.
Yeah, I will. As I alluded to earlier in the conversation, the chairman and I have had conversations about the needs committee, and it really was, we said, okay, let's make sure the budget is done for this year. Let's get the fire station shovel in the ground, and then develop, seek participants, work with a new receiver to say, okay, who on the school side are we going to have, who on the town, like the chairman said, the needs. I did pull out the former needs committee who appointed them, which was the town manager. We'll seek people that wish to go on that. We've served on those, so we understand the concept. And just to that point, we're going to take a look at what does the plan say, what makes sense for Southbridge, and what buildings can you either use, reuse, or are you building brand new? That's part of the building needs committee. So it really was, let's get that fire station contract through, shovels in the ground. We have the animal control shelter, the roads, now all that stuff is moving, and now we're gonna move into this fiscal year. Let's hit the ground with, let's take a look at that needs. That's why the school, working with the school and Mark, what do you need fixed right now? What do you have already in that budget from prior old capital that we can reallocate to fix immediate things, those critical things right away? And let's then develop the plan for going forward.
And I do like the approach of, don't let the buildings deteriorate.
Right.
Continue to work on them. But as far as the assessment, I was on a needs committee, and then I was on chairman of the building committee. And I think when we built the high school, we had science teachers, we had subgroups saying, I need 5 science labs, I need this. When we got everything together from the assessment, what do you need for classroom, what do you need for media, tech, auditorium, gym, everything, then we took it and we went to the state for the funding, and they had a set of criteria that we worked with, because they just don't give you a blank check. I mean, we had 87% funding at the time, which was a perfect storm, but some of the buildings that we're looking at, can they be reused? You have people saying the building's falling down because a window fell out. Well, if you look at West Street School, those windows have been replaced probably twice in the lifetime of the building. When the town manager talks about bones of a building, you're talking about the brick mortar structure, foundation. You can put new floors, new windows, new walls on the interior, new roof. So I think those are the kind of discussions that happen at committee. And I know the town manager and I, and everybody's on the same page. We were working to get to through the fire bid and the building and the groundbreaking before we embarked on this. So it's going to look like past the reorganization of this council, but town manager has a very, very big role in appointing these committees to make it happen.
And just go to the schools. I mean, Mark Latoy, the facilities director of facilities, who's been a great assistance to us on a multitude of other buildings for us. It's been great to work with. Had come before us and asked me, and I had communication with the chair about possibly doing a Green Communities grant for Eastford Road School to revamp their whole heating, air conditioning, install air conditioning. But the question was, in order for you to apply for that, you had to commit that that school was going to be in existence for 20 more years. And we said, can we commit to that? No, we can't, because we have to do this needs assessment. We don't want to commit to that and say, okay, we're hamstrung this year. We'll have an opportunity next year to possibly apply again, but for that, why make that rush decision to apply for that if we don't know if that Eastford Road building is going to fit into the overall scheme of schools?
And that, if I may continue, and that's my main reason of asking that is the fact that when Dr. Villar made the presentation of what the needs were, it was a limited presentation of really no options. To me, it looked like they drove towards a new, as the way to do it, you know, so.
If I could comment on that, the one thing you're going to learn about going through this next process with schools, everybody in schools want Cadillacs. When you put a structural guy like myself, and you look at a building, you look at it differently than a maintenance person or a principal. Principal in a perfect world would want a new elementary school, and I expect them to ask for that. But when you get into the nitty-gritty of the actual building of something or refurbishing, what it translates to is numbers. That story is behind the numbers, and the numbers will drive the project along with the needs. And that's a judgment that's done by the town school together. That's why Mr. Villar moving on, and the Metzger being there, and working with Jack, and the working relationship is much different right now, and the atmosphere is a lot better, and I think that's going to be in the best benefit of the buildings, no matter what we do.
And I think Mark's great for the school facilities. I think he's frugal, and with you behind him, okay, thank you very much.
Councilor Dow.
Thank you, Chair, to you. Last year, we got a new truck for the school the maintenance department. Why do we need another one now? Did anyone is gonna be off service?
There was one coming out of service, but I think it was 2 years ago that they got a truck, not last year, if I remember correctly.
I think last year.
Which one's coming out of service?
I'll double check it.
Okay.
'Cause I'll bring it up when I put the presentation, I'll make sure we have all the documentation.
My eyebrows went up when it said 450, an F-450.
Yeah, I think he said it was the dump body one of the dump bodies.
Okay.
So
I mean,
it was
we
a dump body
We have
truck.
some on DPW. I don't know why we need that heavy truck for the school
Yeah.
maintenance.
Well, we can have a conversation and have them in when we talk about that capital. I'm not saying, we're not voting on the funding of this tonight. That was just the plan, that the plan is in place. Any funding will come out of future meetings, so we're not funding those this
Right.
evening.
Thank you.
Any other questions? No further questions?
I'd like to thank everybody, thank my staff, Michelle, Dean, for all the hard work throughout this past year. A lot of challenges, but with a lot of great teamwork. I apologize for the delay, that we're about a couple weeks out than we would like to be, but that was due to circumstances beyond our control. But a lot of hard work to bring it to closure by the charter deadline date. So thank you all.
Thank you. At this time, if there's nobody like to speak on any of the issues in front of us, the budget, I'd like to call the public hearing closed.